All right, so what did everybody think about the video? General
I
thoughts,
thought
I guess.
I thought it was really nice to hear from interpreters just like um, what to look for in like while we're still students and what we can do um, to make our transition from being a student into our career an easier transition. Maybe like working for um, like being a student interpreter in our fourth year or things like that, different opportunities that we can take advantage of.
I also really liked that they were interpreters who graduated from this program. I think
Yeah,
that's
me
an
too.
important thing to note, just because they know exactly how we're feeling and where we are, so they can give us like more specific advice.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. I feel like it really like addressed because of like what you mentioned, like it really like addressed the concerns that like we have about like, becoming interpreters and the things that are gonna happen in the program.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And like overall, after watching that video, I'm not as, I guess, scared about it. Like
Yeah.
they were in our shoes, I guess is a way to put it. But so they're kind of like, listen, you can talk to us. It's gonna be okay. Like it's hard now, but you'll learn how to get through things, which was really nice.
I thought it was interesting that they like their PowerPoint literally were not scary. Like I thought it was funny that they addressed our social awkwardness as a generation.
Yes, that too.
Right.
I was just gonna say, if you're awkward, it's okay. And I'm like, great, that describes me.
And it's kind of nice that they actually said, please talk to us. Like, don't be afraid to come over and talk to us. We want you to. Because I've always had that fear that I don't want to interrupt someone while they're working, even if it's after or before. I don't want to like approach them. But hearing that made me feel a little bit better that I could just
Right.
go and be like, hi.
Yeah, I mean, I
Networking is so important.
anxiety being like that they want to talk to us and that we're encouraged to go talk to them, because I would love to talk to them, but I always felt like I was interrupting and I didn't want to interrupt their work.
I mean, before I've watched the video, I've like approached interpreters before, like after they finished interpreting, and I just like make a comment about something that did in the interpretation, and usually they seem like happy about that and just like happy that someone's like interested in what they're doing when they're just like doing their job. So
Yeah, I mean, like anybody feels good when somebody's interested in what they're doing. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing. If somebody's like, "Oh, hey, I noticed that," you're like, "Oh my god, you're paying attention. That's so cool."
Right.
And it was nice to hear about, oh my gosh, what is it called? Oh, the observations. And I'm actually kind of excited for that because different people sign differently. So I guess I'm just excited to see how interpreters in the field sign this concept or, um, different signs that they choose to use. And, maybe I can take that and borrow it.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely learn a lot from observations. And it's nice that you can reach out to them and be like, hey, I need an observation. Please help. And they're fine with that. Like they want us to do that.
Yeah, I definitely feel better about the observations because I was like a little bit nervous about how I was going to do that, but knowing that there's like a crap load of interpreters on this campus, like I guess subconsciously I knew that, but having them say there's a crap load of people here, you're going to be fine.
Yeah,
Right.
it's definitely great to have so many interpreters on campus because it's honestly a great support system, and you can learn so much just from watching people and
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was particularly interested in when they were talking about interpreting study abroad trips. Because Spanish is my second major, so I've been like, there's an interpreter in my class, and I was thinking about it like, how do you interpret a study abroad trip? Because isn't the point of that to learn a different language? So, like, the interpreter in my Spanish class only interprets when the teacher speaks English, and there's captionists for the Spanish.
Okay, yeah. I
I
think
thought that was cool that they had the opportunity to go on a study abroad trip.
yeah.
Ever
Oh,
since I saw like the people from like the Netherlands come over here with like that they were like sign language interpreting majors, but for like Netherlands sign language, and that we have a program to go over there. I was just like, I want to do that. I don't know any Dutch, but I really want to do that like in like the third or fourth year.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they came over here barely knowing any ASL, and they did fine. And probably did a little bit better than me, but they were also like farther ahead in their sign language programs, so they understand like just general sign language rules better than we did.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was awesome that they were talking about the opportunities that we have. Like if we were to go work at RIT, the benefits that employees get, like that you can study abroad and you can get a master's degree. Like you can get another degree in whatever, and that's really, it's good for me because I don't ever want to stop learning. That's like something that I always want to do. I just want to keep learning, and I think that would be a really awesome opportunity.
Definitely. I'm glad they also like they went through the pros and cons of each of like the I don't know what you would call it, but each of like the ways.
Settings,
Sorry, what was that?
the settings.
Not settings, but like the
Like
different
freelance
types of
versus
interpreting.
staff.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right. Oh, I can't think of words. But I'm glad they kind of ran through that and we're like, okay, so if you do this, you get benefits with this particular thing, but if you do this, you might not get this. Like with staff interpreting, you get health benefits, you have like a stable job, you don't have to worry about going out and finding your own assignments. But
Yeah,
you can
I'm also
also,
really glad they went through those. It
yeah,
was just clarifying.
And I was glad that they talked about VRS interpreting because I've heard a lot of people, a lot of other interpreters talk about it negatively. And VRS interpreting is something that I'm thinking about. So um, it was interesting and just nice to see a different perspective. And you know, like they were talking about how when they're talking with somebody, like when they're interpreting for somebody through VRS, you have maybe 10 seconds before the next call to just kind of debrief to yourself and say, you know, I could have done this differently. But then in a face-to-face, you might not have that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you will be able to debrief afterwards, but yeah, I guess.
I mean, one of the things with like freelance interpreting that I think would be hard for me is not being able to debrief with somebody who is also in the situation. Because, like, if you're a staff interpreter, there's other people who are in the same or similar situations as you were. But I feel like if you're a freelance interpreter, your work with a team is more limited. So I don't know, just being able to like debrief with somebody, I think will be important for me.
right. And I think that's definitely where like connections come in. Like since the community is so small, hopefully there'd be a point where you're able to like meet with other interpreters working on a case, like, and just kind of build those connections and be able to debrief with them or talk to them about certain assignments.
I like that in the video it showed like it talked about like all the different like options. So it shows like that like if you don't like a particular one, like if like you don't like VRS, there's like freelance like staff interpreting, and that's uh like I don't think I would like VRS, but like I think like staff or freelance would be more interesting. and I'm like glad they like talked about all the different ones.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And like before watching this, I was kind of leaning towards freelance, but I don't know. Now I'm leaning more towards staff interpreting. So in a way, that kind of like changed my way of thinking about things, which was nice, I guess.
Yeah, and I like that they touched on how important it is to, get yourself out there and take the community classes and stuff like that, because then we can really decide if we like it or if we don't. And, we're learning about different, different things that we can do of VRS or staff interpreting. And I'm kind of going back and forth right now. I don't really know what I want to do. So I think that's when, that will be really beneficial for me to make a decision, or at least help guide me in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
I really liked that they talked about VRS just because I don't know much about it, but even with their positive feedback on it, I still don't think I want to do it. I wish they had like altered their presentation a little bit to touch on how COVID has impacted things, because this is our new reality, and I've been reevaluating some things, like trying to figure out what I want to do, because I don't want to do VRS. I don't want to be stuck in front of a screen all day if I don't have to be. Before COVID, I was thinking about medical interpreting because I want to be out and like actually interacting with people, but I also don't want to have to wear a mask all day. So I wish they had like talked a little bit more about COVID.
I think if you reach out to them and just send them an email, I think they'll answer questions like that. When I did my interview, I talked with the interpreter about that, and it wasn't even part of my questions, but that's something that we touched on because it definitely has changed things. And I mean, they did touch on it a little bit in the video, saying that it's like when you're doing an observation, it's a little bit different doing it on Zoom because the time you're supposed to show up might be a little bit different, and debriefing might be different afterwards, stuff like that.
Definitely. It's nice knowing that we have someone to go to for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like since we already mentioned this, but like since they want us to talk to them, it's nice knowing that if we have these questions at any point, we can just be like, hey, since you have experience in this thing, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm also excited to like get more experience and progress in the field so I can be that person for somebody else. Yes.
Right. That would be awesome at some point to be able to like guide people somewhat in the right direction when they're starting out. Because I know right now, like as a first year, I don't know, this is very overwhelming.
My first year was overwhelming too. I feel like I've gotten a little bit more settled in my second year. And I've when I had my interview with the interpreter, we kind of talked about that and how like they understand where we are right now. And I think that's great that they understand where we are and where we're coming from and how we're feeling, and they can help guide us. And then one day we'll be able to help guide the upcoming interpreters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they did this video and that they made us aware that they're there if we need to talk to them. I'm still a little bit confused about why this class is open to first years, because if I had taken this my first semester, I would have been like, shit, okay, what?
Yeah, it's a little bit overwhelming just because like you're trying to learn, well, as you know, like you're starting off as real sign language classes on top of like, learning grammar, and then it's like, oh, interpreting right now.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm nowhere close to being able to do anything like that in a professional setting. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think it's good that I'm kind of like easing my way into it. Like you're starting to learn how to be professional, how to reach out. So that way in the future you kind of keep it in the back of your mind for later.
Yeah, that makes sense. but I feel like they could like work that into your ASL classes right now. Like,
Yeah.
just how to be a professional person. You don't have to know how to interpret yet, but you do have to know how to be professional.
Right. But I
I
think
think
that was a good point actually in the presentation of like being professional. Since it is such a small community, you have to like make sure that you're doing things out in the community that are appropriate.
Yeah.
And if people see you, they're not going to be like, oh, this person, I don't know if I want them to be an interpreter for this assignment because of what they did whenever, anything like that.
Diego, were you going to say something?
yeah, I was gonna say something. That one, I think they're like teaching it the first years now. I don't know. This is just my guess because like some people go into the program like learning ASL but don't like interpreting that much. So like if you introduce in the program like interpreting things, then they'll like they have a better understanding of like what they're getting into and they don't just get into interpreting like second or third year.
Oh, that makes
Um
sense.
That,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
That's a good point,
yeah.
but I feel like they could make it like even more introductory, I guess.
Mhm.
I think this
Yeah.
course is designed with the assumption that you have the knowledge of ASL under your belt.
Right. I think so too. And that's like a valid assumption. When you're
Yeah.
starting out interpreting, I feel like you're kind of expected to know a little bit more of what you're doing. Um, but yeah. All right.
Also going back on what we said earlier, like I think the reason that they're like that like the interpreter is so willing to help is like the same reason that you are like right now. It's just like they were in the same position we were like a few years ago, and now they're just like, I know what you're going through, so that yeah, that's like that's really helpful.
It's very validating too, like
Mhm.
because we get to see these people who are being successful and they're like, oh yeah, I felt the same exact way you do now. And they
Mhm.
still went on to be successful individuals.
Mhm.
And it's nice to know that it's okay to make mistakes. I fight with myself about that a lot, making mistakes. And, you know, and another thing that they touched on was saying no, like knowing your boundaries and knowing that it's okay to make mistakes. You just have to learn from them. And yeah, I think one thing that I took away from that presentation that was so important was learning your boundaries and knowing when to say no and knowing your personal limits, like what makes you feel negative, what makes you feel positively, and how you can just use those things that you know about yourself to be a better interpreter and maybe go this way instead of that way.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that they touched on like the boundaries thing, just because that's been very relevant to my life right now is like knowing my own boundaries with other people.
Right.
I'm not gonna get into my own personal shit, but it connects well with my life right now.
Yeah.
Like I know for me personally, it's very hard to say no. Like if someone's like, can you do this thing? And it's something that I don't know, wouldn't necessarily be supposed like I shouldn't do it, I guess. It's a better way to put it. And I usually like I'm always like, yeah, sure, like I'll get it done even if it's extremely hard or it takes a while or it just kind of like drains me emotionally. I will still usually say yes. So it's good to know that you can say no. And it's like, okay, I need to figure out myself and then I can go and see if I can do this thing. But if I'm not comfortable with it, I don't have to do it. Um, and just kind of knowing where to set boundaries also with the person or the group of people that you're working with was kind of nice because usually if someone talks to me, I'll listen. But as an interpreter in a professional setting, you need to know like where to set the line and just be like, hey, maybe we can talk about this after or comfortable talking about this or anything like that.
Yeah.
One thing that I learned a long time ago that I'm just starting to put into play right now is knowing that saying no isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. And so if you have something that's going to impact you negatively, I mean, sometimes you do have to do things that you don't want to do. I get that. But other times there are things that you can avoid that would make your life, you know, not as enjoyable or make your day just that much more stressful. And when you're interpreting, it's already stressful, and you already have to manage your time. You have to manage all of these things. And so I'm getting used to the fact that saying no is not selfish.
Yeah, I think it's especially relevant now with COVID because everybody's just so done. Like, people don't have anything left, and being able to take care of yourself and say, I can't do that, I'm sorry. But I think people are really
And
learning.
you don't even have to be sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like even now, it's even more important to take care of yourself first. And just, I know personally, like college, people are still trying to figure out how to manage this. Everything is kind of crazy. And so it's easy to just spend, every day in front of your computer working because you're not in necessarily like a classroom setting. But you still have to remember you are doing work, and it's okay to just take a break and be like, I'm gonna, watch a movie or something. Do something that I want to do.
I'm gonna take some me time, and that's okay.
Right. And that's also something that I need to work on, not apologizing for, because I I very much am that person.
I say sorry so frequently, and my girlfriend is just like, shut up. Just stop.
Right. I also like going back to what you were saying before, I also like struggled with making mistakes, like in the sense that I was concerned that since I do make mistakes that I won't be a good interpreter. Like I know when I'm for a class and upload it, if I make one mistake, I get so upset with myself. And I'm like, oh, I'll never be able to do this. But
Right.
people make mistakes.
Yeah. And I felt like that too, but I think it's important to make mistakes because if you don't know how to, say you don't know how to use classifiers or something, you have to make mistakes in order for somebody to teach you, or you can ask,
Yeah, and I feel like deaf people are very open to helping you. So like if you sign something, they're like, what was that? Like, you that's not how you sign that. And I don't know. I feel like in this profession you're just always growing, and you're like, there's no one person who knows how to interpret everything perfectly.
Definitely. Um, with what you were saying, yeah, I definitely look at like when I moved in, my suite mate, she was like the two across from me were deaf, and they were so sweet. Like I wanted to like go and talk to them, and like as we were chatting, if I signed something wrong, they'd be like, no, wait, this isn't how you sign this. And then they'd correct me, but they weren't like upset about it. They were super understanding. And I feel like most people are like that, and they want to help you grow and learn to communicate better, which is really nice because I feel like it can definitely be intimidating, even in an interpreting setting. You're supposed to be, you're the interpreter. You're supposed to provide like access, but they're still willing to help you even in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people are just appreciative that you want to be involved in the community and that you're trying. Like I made this point before, but if you travel internationally where English is not the first language, you're going to appreciate anybody trying to speak English, even if it's broken or you don't fully understand them. But the fact that they're trying is what's important. So I think it's the same dynamic, I guess.
And I think they mentioned that a little bit, like trying to involve yourself is super important. Like just go, even if you're not participating necessarily, just go to events and just observe or ask questions. stuff like that.
Does anybody have any more thoughts?
Um,
We've been talking for like 25 minutes, so that seems solid to me.
Okay.
the only thing that I have, like, I have a list of notes that I made. Like when I think it was Emily was talking about when you're in an interpreting setting, there will be times when you don't know the language that's used. Like they may reference something that you have absolutely no idea what it is, but you still interpret it and it
Mhm.
works out fine. But your brain kind of tells you, like, was that a word? Like, what is that? Do I know that? And
Yeah.
you kind of have that moment of panic. I've definitely been there, which is nice. It's nice to know that I'm not the only one. Be like, I don't know what they just said.
Yeah.
I can't figure it out.
The whole video was very validating on many different levels.
I agree. It's nice to like have that on a personal level. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase that, but they were super like personable, and it wasn't like a formal presentation, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but they weren't like, I don't know how to phrase it, but I'm glad you know what I mean.
Like they weren't lecturing us. They were like,
Right,
what I experienced, I'm sure you're probably feeling the same way.
right. Which is nice because, sure, like a formal presentation, you also learn things, but just having this at a personal level, just being like, hey, we're going to chat with you guys. Like, it's going to be okay. It was really nice
Yeah.
to hear.
I wish it was in person though. That's that's one thing that, I mean, we can't really change that, but if it were in person, I feel like we could just ask questions as they came up, and yeah, but COVID. So
Yeah, this whole thing has been a challenge, but we'll get through it.
we'll get through it.
All right. Well, if you guys don't have any other thoughts, I will stop the recording.
Okay.
Sounds good.